Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hey, it's Joanna Hunter here for another Into the LightWeb podcast. And I am super excited because I am joined by my gorgeous client, Katie Carey. Katie, come and introduce yourself to everybody and tell people what it is that you do in the world.
Hello, Joanna. It's great to be here. I'm Katie Carey. I'm the Managing Director of Katie Carey Media Limited and the founder of Soulful Valley Publishing and the Soulful Valley Publishing House.
Amazing, amazing. So me and you have been on a bit of a journey together because we met in the Lucky Bitch Boot Camp with Denise, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's been a journey of like unfoldment of all the amazing sort of juiciness that you have unfolded. And it's also been a bit of a healing journey as well.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about how we first sort of really connected.
I saw a post that you put into Denise's group for a 444 angel workshop. And that lit my soul up because we'd just gone into the lockdown the month before. So it was April 2020. And my world had come to a bit of a standstill with the businesses that I was trying to run. And your workshop showed up with a pay what you can. So I paid $11.11 because that was really difficult for me to pay at the time. But $11.11 I felt good with. So that was where I jumped into your world, and then it just got better and better.
Amazing. I remember being so nervous putting that offer out of pay what you can, because when Skylar first said to me, my spirit team Skylar first said to me, do that workshop, and I was all gung-ho, and I knew that I'd be working with Archangel Metronon, who's an archangel that I work with a lot. And then when he said, do it, pay what you can, my little ego had a little freak out, and I was like, oh my God. And then I spent like 2 days before I even put that offer out. I spent 2 days getting my energy in order, being able to hold that. And I was like, okay, whatever. What if somebody pays a penny? I'm like, can you hold it? And I'm like, yes. And I got really squeaky clean in my energy. And and everybody who attended that workshop, I was so delighted that whatever they chose to pay, I was so delighted, because it was, and you know, it turned out, as my little workshops that I do now and again, it turned out to be the most abundant little workshop that I'd ever done.
Yeah.
And it showed me like you could really trust the divine. You know, the divine does provide, because here I put this offer out and people could literally choose what they want. And then, you know, and then it turns out to be like the biggest seller that I've ever popped out, you know, and it was really like, oh, wow. Okay. And I felt like, so even before that workshop had started, I was really calibrating to those angelic frequencies of like, they really took me out of my comfort zone, as the angels have a habit of doing. And it was really scary, but I met the most incredible people like yourself through that workshop, which was like, just magic. It was magic. Tell us what happened after, because you then started popping up in my world a bit more regularly.
I did. You offered a 5-day workshop, a free one that was leading into Deepak. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. And I heard you talk somewhere in between about LightWeb, and I was like, is this LightWeb? I really the LightWeb was calling, but that wasn't for months. at that point. It was much later in the year. So I dived into DPAP, but it wasn't an easy decision because financially I was in an absolute mess. But an option came up where I could take a mortgage holiday, so I took it and I paid you instead. Like, that was my okay, how can I do this? Because that's what I ask myself these days. How can this happen? Especially if I know that my soul is calling me to do it. So yeah, that's what happened. And when I got in there, I wasn't ready for DPAP. But there was one point when I asked you what I should focus on, and you said the podcast, because I just decided that I was going to launch a podcast, but I was thinking, how can this make me money? I was like, how is this going to sort my life out now?
I had exactly the same thought as I told you to focus on the podcast, because I was channeling and I said to Skylar, what should she focus on? Skylar says, the podcast. And my brain's like going off on a tangent thinking, how is she going to make money? How is that going to pay her bills? I was literally like that. But I trust my spirit team so implicitly. I knew it was the right advice to give you. But there was part of me as well, because you had that background in television and acting and things like that. I thought, yeah, media is really good for her like this, because when you would talk about that time in your life, you would really light up. And I just knew that something with media has got to come out of this, and I thought, okay, well, let's trust that the podcast might be this stepping stone into something bigger or whatever. But as it turns out, the podcast was the mother load.
Oh, I'm getting shivers while we're talking about this. because I think as well, like when I saw an opportunity for a podcast challenge, I realized in there that I had everything that I needed for it. I had the topics to talk about, the sort of things that I wanted to share on the podcast. I had the equipment sitting around in my house, which was crazy, but I'd planned on creating meditations at one point, so I had everything already here. And I felt this real passion about the podcast. I really loved the idea of it, because I also, when I was acting, I did radio dramas for Radio 4, so I loved radio. And there was just this joy within me, whereas other people, I think they see it as, oh, it's just a marketing tool that's a bit of a pain in the ass extra.
Like it's a chore, it's hard work. But I knew that, like, that was the one thing that really convinced me to say it to you when it came through the channel was, yeah, but when she talks about media things, she's like a firecracker. She lights up from the inside out. And I knew that the podcast would be something that would light you up.
Yeah. And then what that did was connect me with a lot of great people and build the know, like, and trust, because people had me in their ears, which I trust people that I listen to more, because I've got them in, if I've got someone whose favorite podcast it is. In fact, a few years ago, when I was in a job I hated and a business I hate, a job I hated and a marriage I hated at the time, I was really resentful. The thing that helped me through that was Jay Shetty's podcast. And,
right, okay.
And the first paid group I joined was his Genius membership back then.
Oh my goodness, amazing.
So I felt that connection with him. So I think other people have felt that connection with me.
That's it. I mean, it is the know, like, and trust. I know it sounds like really cheesy marketing thing, but it is true. Like you get to know their personality and stuff like that off a podcast, and and the conversation's great. And if you're really enjoying it, it becomes like part of your daily life in a way. It's like listening to a certain radio station, and you sort of get, it's almost, it feels weird, but it's almost like these guys are friends that are on the radio station, I love that. So from the podcast, things just grew. So where do we grow to next?
Well, let me, the next thing I did was, but before, we'll back up a little bit before I actually launched the podcast, because after DPAP, when I realized I wasn't really ready for this, there was so much amazing content, and I felt a bit overwhelmed to begin with because I wasn't ready internally. And unity came up. And with unity, I started to channel again. Now, years ago, I used to channel. So I didn't know that was what I was doing then, but I was channeling songs in full, with the lyrics and the music and all of it in a wanna. So I used to have that gift as a child, but that had been cut off from me for a long time, probably because of medication over years as an adult as well. And then when we did Unity, a song came through me called You've Got to Love Yourself. And I realized that it was for the podcast. So I used that as the theme tune. And I realized as well that was what that was for me. So I was being called to love myself more. So I wasn't so caught up in the money anymore. And things were popping in to support me. And then LightWeb appeared. And I launched the podcast the week of LightWeb, my first round of LightWeb.
That was an incredible week, because not only did you launch the podcast, join LightWeb, but you manifested a massive check.
After the first night after the LightWeb activation, there was a brown envelope on my doormat about my pension being moved up to a tier 2, because I was ill health retired a few years ago. And I didn't even understand the letter because it didn't have all the information in there. But the next morning I looked at my bank account, there was 9 grand sitting in it. So now I'm really able to focus on leaning back and loving myself because there's no, I'm not in survival mode anymore. So I'm starting.
It's a huge thing, isn't it? Moving from that survival mode.
And then focus on the joy of what I was creating. So I carried on with the podcast. It quite quickly got into top 5%. And in December, someone popped in and asked me if I'd like to write in a multi-author book. But I had so many interviews booked up for December. I told myself I wanted 2 weeks off in December. So I didn't see it. I didn't see the opportunity. I couldn't feel it. I wasn't connected with it. But after Christmas, New Year came, and in the January, I'd got out my vision board, and at the top, there's something I've wanted to do for a very long time. And even my father told me as a child I was going to be a writer one day. I popped a thing on the middle of my notice board, my vision board, saying best-selling author. I was like, right, I'm going to do this now. Nothing is going to stop me. And by the 13th of January, so I did that at the beginning of January, not even 2 weeks later, I was in the first multi-author book. Oh, let's back up. There was something before that. What about the My $1 Million Experiment?
Oh, yes. Just that little tiny experiment that I ran that just went a little bit crazy bananas.
That changed because you were talking about that from August. So I was bringing in affiliates for that because I signed up to that affiliate opportunity as well between August and December. So 62 people came in through me from that experiment. Oh, but also something in your book I picked up on was that line about you don't save your way to wealth, you invest your way to wealth. And I've kept that one.
I'm getting chills. That literally. So I want to give the credit to who actually said that. It was a wonderful woman called Anne Wilson. And I happened to see her. She came up to Inverness, where I live. And she happened to have this evening where you could spend an evening, and she gave this talk, and you could ask Q&A at the end. And she said that line, and just like you, something clicked for me. And there was several things that sort of happened for me all at once in my energy. The first one was I acknowledged I'm very good at spending. So I'm like, I got this, and so that was the first thing of really, really I got this, because this girl knows how to spend. And then the second thing was that, like, before that, I had really believed that you kind of hoard your money. And of course, because I was so good at spending, I never got the opportunity to hoard my money. And I thought that's how you got wealthy. And then realizing actually it's about investment, it's about using your money in smart ways, as opposed to just letting it accumulate, which is not really the growing of wealth, because it's not a sustainable sort of model, you know. And it was like, it was just this light bulb moment of, yeah, you don't save your way to wealth, you invest your way. And it was like, man, I can do that. I can do that.
And that really helped me when Bridget sent me the book title and an image of the book, and I didn't know her at all. She was on my friends list. I had no idea who she was, but I felt that book, and I felt like that was a title I could have come up with that for a book myself. So that
Amazing.
was intuitive, knowing her truth. So I jumped into that one, and I jumped into that quite late on as well. I think it was about 6 weeks before launch, 6 or 7 weeks before launch.
Okay.
And once I was in there, she was offering a referral opportunity if you recruited authors into the book, because there were still a few places. So I took up that one, and 3 people came into her book, which some of my investment came back through that anyway. And while we were leading up to the launch, I heard Bridget talking about, you know, how she started her publishing house. And bear in mind, I've had this thing in me for years to write books, and I know that that's not just going to be 1 or 2 books. That's going to be, you know, I'll probably be writing for the rest of my life. So when I heard, I thought, okay, I need to know about this publishing. So I started to pay attention to what was going on around me. And then we launched the book. We were international bestsellers overnight. And I'd been looking at the person that she trained with to publish, and it was a big investment, but there was an opportunity to do it in a 3-month payment plan. So I thought, okay, let me back up here and see if I can recruit people into books. And so I did, with not just Bridget, but a couple of other authors. So I thought, I can do this, so I'm going to do this. And I went and I jumped in and I said yes. And then each month, because money was tight by this point, that 9 grand had gone by now. Each month something came, like I had a PPI payment that covered it. I even had a credit card one of the months that popped in when I couldn't get credit at that point, that had 444 as a security code on the back of the card.
Unreal.
Like, so I trusted, I knew. I was like, this was sent for me. And then it turned out that I launched the publishing house on the 4th of May, which is a spiritual date for me. 2 of my grandparents passed on the 4th of May. And I think it took about a month before my first author came in. And I didn't do any sales calls. They all came in they all felt me one after the other. So yeah, the first book was a great success. We became international bestsellers again. And then something happened. There was something in my energy going on during the end process, and I was plugged into the void in between, straight after the launch. And then I watched pretty shit things happen, because I'm a really great manifester. So we've got great things can come in, but equally I'll have the bad things coming in one after the other. So my ex-brother-in-law died. My ex-husband ended up communicating with me, and I was allowing that. And I went through a 5-month period with no income in my business. And then I realized what was going on eventually. Watching myself, I went and did some healing with the compassion key on my inner child. I think I did about a 3-month course on that one. And then I went into past life regressions, because I've been avoiding that for years. And I don't know what. I think it was to do with my dad, because my dad, when we were younger, talked about reincarnation. And came through as a German pilot and Jesus Christ and a few other things. He was drunk when he did it as well. So I think there was a little bit of a fear in that for me.
Okay, like it seemed like a step too far.
Yeah, but I did it, and the subject was around money blocks in past lives, and it felt like it dislodged something, because kidney stones. I had a kidney stone drama where they were literally just passing through in one day, where in the past I've had them for 3 years and struggled with them. But they came through me. I looked up or discovered what the spiritual meaning of that was, and it was to do with love and emotions and money, all connected.
Okay.
And while they were passing through me, in a down moment where the pain had eased a little bit, I looked at my phone, and an author came in and said, I want to write in your next Evolving on Purpose. And it was like it dislodged it, because everything was
Started to flow again.
absolutely wonderful again. So yeah, I've just had so many. I've noticed the patterns more recently. Towards the end of last year, I had an opportunity to join a movie, which was a 15k investment. And when I first looked at that, I thought, wow, I can't be in a movie called Zero Limits unless I can get in it with zero limits. And then things happened, and I'm in it.
Amazing.
And then
amazing.
you're the 100. I watched a video about that in your group that was leading up to people joining, and it was the 11th of the 11th. And I said to myself, okay, I'm not ready now, but I'm doing this. And in January, I was in. And then because of that decision to join the 100, I've had 5 months, November, December, January, February, March, where I've had between 5 and 7k income consistently. Never had consistent months like that before. And it wasn't until I know it's an up level, because something happened where my stepdad had a heart attack. I got COVID, and my mum was rushed in with heart failure. I kept myself okay with the first two, but when it was my mum, my emotions went to pot a bit, and there stopped the money flow again. And it was so obvious, because there was money supposed to be coming in that wasn't. They were late payments, or there's a grant that I've been supported with called Access to Work as well last year, that popped in to help me as well. But I pay for things in advance and they pay me back within 10 days, but they just happen to have a delay for 6 weeks. That's never happened before. So I can see the patterns and what happens with my emotions if they're all over the place and I'm plugged into the void. So it's really important.
One of the things that I really admire about you, Katie, is how you have, even though you do experience the void, and as we all do, I mean, I experience the void as well, but there has been this level of faith throughout, this whole journey that we have been on together. There has been this level of faith and this level of what I would call like following the childlike curiosity, ooh, what would that be like? Or, ooh, that sounds fun, and instead of immediately, like as a lot of adults do, when we see something like that, we do get that childlike curiosity. We're like, ooh, that would be exciting. But then immediately the adult part of us shuts it down straight away and is like, well, that's out of the question. We don't have the money for that. And then we close off our energy fields. One of the things that I admire about you is that you don't close off your energy field, that you keep it open, because you're like, okay, divine, how can this happen, right? Because like, instead of being like, nope, that's a no-go, bank account says no, it's like, no, how could that happen? And that faith of like, if I'm meant to do this, something will pop in. And I've always admired that as you've been going on this journey, because there has been that level of faith. How important do you feel like that's been to your journey?
100%. I've had to have faith and trust in myself and spirit. It's been hard. It's not been easy. It's
not easy.
Definitely not been easy. But but there's a bigger picture that we often forget. You've mentioned before spiritual amnesia, and we go there, don't we? Especially when those things happened in my family, those, you know, dramatic events, then you're in conversations with the whole family about it, and it's easy to forget. And I think, you know, it took me a little while as each thing has happened to remember, hold on a minute, I've got access to the LightWeb. And then I've come in and I've asked everyone to send healing, and each thing that's happened. My mum nearly died, but she didn't. I don't think she realizes how close she was. But I feel like I was supported in that, and I was supported after it. I was supported in how I've had to look at, like, they're not doing the things that they need to do for themselves. They're not loving themselves. They're still doing the things that they were doing that are going to, you know, not
good for their
not
health,
great.
basically. I think
But
a
I've
lot
had
of
to,
I think
yeah,
a lot of children, of adult parents and adult children, can appreciate that, of, you know, knowing that their parents, and also as well knowing that there's a certain level of, well, they may not change, and the sadness that that brings as well,
yeah,
right? Of like,
there's
they may
nothing that
not
we can
change
do
their
about
ways
that.
that are
Yeah.
damaging. And of course, we want them to stay here and be here as long as possible. And then they don't have the self-love sometimes to make the right
No.
choices.
And I've had to bring myself to a place of acceptance of that, staying in my own garden, staying in my own energy
Yes, own
garden.
energy garden.
But something great that has come out of all of this as well the last couple of months is that all of my children are on a very similar wavelength to me now. They know all about wealth and how to increase wealth. They're very accepting, and they've got this 20-30 years before me, and I'm really happy about that. So, do you know, if nothing else happened in my business, that would be enough for me, because their mindsets are so different to what they would have been if I hadn't been doing this work myself. So
yeah,
I feel like the ripple effect out to
I see that in my
everybody
kids as
around
well.
me. Yeah,
You know,
that's the biggest gift.
yeah, my eldest daughter is an amazing manifester, and she's so aware of like the laws of the universe and stuff like that. And she's just in her 20s, and I thought, God, if I knew all of this in my 20s, like, watch out, world. You know, it is such an incredible toolbox when you understand how the laws of the universe work, or you have access to things like LightWeb, and even the teachings of unity. I think for me, unity was like the foundation on which I stand on, of really like my self relationship with myself. I think so many people, they have such, what I call such dodgy self relationships, you know, and I see it a lot. I wrote a post about it just the other day, and of, you know, amazing, incredibly talented, intelligent women, and they're striving really hard in their businesses, and they're putting in the work, they're doing it, but secretly behind the scenes, it deep inside themselves, they secretly believe that they will fail. And then they are surprised when they fail, when they don't have the success that they want, that they're working so very hard for. But the foundation, the base is themselves. And it's that lack of self-belief that's sending a very different signal out to the universe to the one that they actually want to have returned. And for me, that's where the self-awareness that came from the teachings of unity, and realizing it is me that sends that signal out, and the universe is taking its cues from my energy. And when I'm in the void, you know, even it doesn't matter how hard I work, it's source ain't gonna show up until I flip the switch and get myself out of that, you know, one of the, we call the shadow web, you know, one of the shadow web archetypes, and gets myself out of those archetypes of feeling like my, you know, obviously the classic archetype is poor little me, and really feeling that. And of course, when we're hearing that story in our head, the poor little me story, what happens is, you know, we have to live the poor little me reality, which is always such a tough gig.
Mm. And I spent years years in that, not taking care of myself, putting everybody else first. I ran a charity for 7 years, and that was hard. That felt like the world was on my shoulders, and that's when my body started to deteriorate. So I wasn't taking care of me. And this, even as a mindfulness teacher, I think mindfulness had helped me to accept what had happened to me, but I still wasn't putting myself first or
No.
really taking care of me until I landed in unity. So yeah.
And it's a frightening. Did you find unity frightening in some degree? Not that the course was frightening, but like this prospect of like, okay, I'm going to follow these teachings, but they're telling me to put myself first. And it's almost like the image I had in my head of like was me like being pushed through a door frame while I'm holding on to like the door frame for dear life, of not really, like, so afraid of like being seen as selfish that I was going to put myself first.
Yeah, and it's
very
still
resistant.
it's still a journey, isn't it? Because I still don't do all the things. But it's a journey, and I think you get better at it as time goes on.
Absolutely,
And
100%.
when you work in a business as well, where you're like, I'm project managing a lot of the other people, so I've got to be really mindful of how my energy is affected with that. So there's things that I'm still putting in place to make that better. I'm about to go to another book launch now, so there's things happening that, okay, what can I do to make this easier for all of us, because I don't like the energy of chasing, for starters.
That was a big realization, that the energy of sort of that, I call it the chasey energy, the energy of chasing is like such a hustle energy. And I think we have to learn how to heal the hustle. You know, so many of us are caught in the hustle, and the hustle is so praised. I mean, I remember growing up and it was how hard you worked. Oh, you were extra special. Oh, you were so great. You're such a hard worker. Nobody praised anyone that got it easy. Nobody praised anyone that had it that was in universal flow. It was always like, if you could struggle like a champion, well done. Oh, you were amazing, you know? And of course, we get so conditioned into the hustle way of doing things, which is often that chasing feeling, followed by a personal favorite of mine for many, many years, the screwball scramble.
Yeah.
Last minute Annie, chucking the mud at the wall, hoping some will stick, the frenziedness of that, and learning how to heal all of those energy patterns. It's a biggie. It's a biggie. And especially like applying that into business, because I think so many, even business coaches and business people out there, do teach that frenzied way of doing things, and not, you know, that we can do it in ease, joy, and flow, that we can do it, we can take our time. And it doesn't have to be this like boom, boom, boom all the time of like go, go, go. Which, you know, even just saying it to me now, I just feel exhausted even thinking about like, it's got to be full on, you know, full throttle all the time. And no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Because we won't love it anymore either, will we? It's not going to work anyway.
I think often what happens when you're in that hustle of life, and you're really in that hustle, even if the results that you truly, truly desire show up, because it can show up in the hustle. And I think that's the worst part of the hustle. It would be a lot easier for our human brains if nothing good came out of the hustle, but we can make good money in the hustle. And that's the addictive quality of why we go back for more sometimes. But I think, you know, that in that hustle energy, it is such a habit to break. And it is just like that, but we don't ever get to really enjoy the fruits of our labor in the hustle, because the moment there's a moment to enjoy the fruits of our labor, it's like your eyes are on the next prize, and you're afraid to stop, you're afraid to slow down, because if you slow down, the minute you slow down in the hustle, you lose momentum. And that is what I call void aligned success, when you're aligning your success with a void, and it really requires your energy to be perpetual and to keep going. Source aligned success is so very different, because you can take a day off, you can take time off to enjoy the fruits of your labor, and everything does not come crashing down.
And you can change your plans, which I've had to do several times as well.
Yes.
So when my intuition has said to me, December, well, after the Entangled No More book launch, there was a bit of a, I won't be doing a second book in the series of Entangled No More because of the energy of the very topic in being entangled.
Okay, intense.
There was a lot that took me through, that it was a journey. And yeah, after that, we were supposed to be launching the Evolving on Purpose that's launching now, but I changed it. I moved it back to this year because I was nudged to put my poetry in a book, because I'd been writing poetry all year since joining Unity. So it could have upset people, but I knew that we weren't ready yet. And I knew that I was being called to do this for another reason. So I went into that first, and if things have to be moved back, they have to be moved back. Some people get really caught up in having to stick to a plan, don't they? And
Very, very,
in a
very
in a source aligned way. Well, things can move as they need to, if they need to. So I've really honed in on being okay with that.
I think one of the big game changers for me in understanding the void nature of the void and the nature of source is that source always plays a long game. That was very game changing for me. Void is about instant gratification.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're in the void, you can't change the date because you want that gratification. You want it now. And you better get published because you said you were going to publish, and and it gets all very intense from there on. Whereas source is playing the long game, then the long game asks, I think personally, more intelligent questions like, what would benefit the whole? What would, what would be better for this project as a whole? And for instance, having the spaciousness to launch so that you can be really fully present for a launch, rather than doing a launch from a state of stress and fear, of feeling like there isn't enough hours in the day and feeling overwhelmed. It's much easier to do a launch when you're feeling spacious and feeling like this is great.
And we've been talking about this book for a long time, so a lot more people they want to read it.
Absolutely. And I've written the foreword for Evolving on Purpose.
Yes, you have.
So I'm very excited about it. I haven't read any of the chapters yet. I'm looking forward to it. But tell us a little bit about what kind of chapters have been coming through, what kind of stories have been coming through in Evolving on Purpose, because I'm really excited about this. I love this because this, I mean, I recognize when you channeled that title, I recognize that's exactly, I think when I really, really was conscious of Evolving on Purpose was not really through my Get Selfish journey, but it was through my Be Your Own Rescue journey. That's when I think I really made that conscious decision of, I am going to evolve on purpose. I am going to become financially free. That was my intention that I set. And I invested in myself, I invested in my growth, all of those things. And it was very much that evolution on purpose. Tell us a little bit about what's been coming through and what kind of exciting chapters people can wait. I know that they won't be able to wait to read this and get their hands on this book.
I've just proofread about 7 of the chapters that have gone through editing. So we've got Jennifer Moore in our community.
Okay, yes,
has written the most amazing high vibration chapter, and she brings in some EFT scripts. I'm an EFT practitioner. I've never read or felt scripts like this.
Amazing.
That is it. We haven't just got stories here. We've got stories leading into leading into solutions, leading into things that
Amazing.
people can use. So we don't just, you know, tell the story and then lead you to go and go to their offers, but we give you something in the book as well. So there's probably thousands of pounds worth of coaching in each of these books before you even go to one of the authors for their services.
Amazing.
So we've got some stories where people, you know, they've been through the darkness, but they found their way, and they share the way they found their way. Several of our authors are from your community, so there's quite a lot on the same wavelength to do with source energy and void energy. It's
Amazing.
It's very high vibrational. We've got a Vedic astrologer who came into the book, the first author to come into the book in December 2021 when I first mentioned the title.
Okay.
And she's worked with Deepak Chopra, and she shares quite a lot of stuff from the ancient yogis, so secrets from the ancient yogis and things.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Things about chanting, and there's just all sorts of magic in there.
Oh, amazing. I cannot wait. I know that this book is going to be special. And there is a lot of ladies from our community, and the communities, you know, the Divine Planning Abundant Profits community and LightWeb communities, they are amazing. And they've got some amazing people in it with some really incredible stories to share. So I'm so looking forward to getting my mitts on this book. I can't wait. And it is that intentionality of involving on purpose. Have you felt, I tend to go into, as you've been in my world for a while, you will know that a weird little phenomenon happens in my world with the students in my courses, which is that there's like maybe about a week or so before the courses, it's like the stuff that the course is working on rises to the surface. We get into the vortex of the course. And I always feel like every single time I launch one of my programs, the week or so before it, I go through like the mill of like loading the information in a way. Have you felt like you've been on this like evolving on purpose journey during during the putting together of evolving on purpose?
Yeah, these books are not just books. They're
like spiritual technology.
They are a spiritual pathway. That's what it's felt like. Other people have told me things that have been happening for them. Some people have had things happen when they've joined one of the books, just signing up before they've even written anything. Things have shifted that they know is because they've just stepped into not just the book title, but they've stepped into this is
it's what we call in when we did that masterclass on the portal. It's like they step through an event horizon, and as they step through, they're willing to let go of an older version of themselves and step into a new version of themselves as they enter that portal. So it's like a transformational portal.
Yeah. And when I just started Lightbringer last month, and all of those things were happening, I knew that this was the up level, and through that I was being called to strengthen my boundaries, to give myself permission to do certain things, that it was all for my benefit, because not just the personal things that came up, there are things that have popped up in my business that I've had to deal with, and that's only going to make things stronger and build, you know, on the bricks I've already got. So
amazing.
It's to me, this is all a spiritual journey, all of it.
It is,
and I'm in it for the long haul. So
I love that. I love that. We're in the vortex at the time of recording this. We're in the vortex of the LightWeb priestess, and I had for about a month, it's been a reclaiming of my power as I step into the person that's going to hold the space for a LightWeb priestess. And it's been a lot about personal power, and versus what we call circumstantial power, of like, it's all great and easy to be powerful when all the circumstances line up, but the true power is, can you be powerful regardless of the circumstances? And that lesson has come hard and fast over the last month for me, of being in that vortex of that. And there's definitely been elements of really recognizing that evolving on purpose, like really recognizing that as I'm making the choices of navigating, of like choosing on purpose, no, this is where I want to go. Yes, Void, I hear you, but thank you very much for your opinion, but we're going to go here. And it's been really interesting to observe my own behaviors as I've like kind of opened my field ready to teach the LightWeb priestess. Do you find that before you start the programs and things, there's a little vortex thing happening of stuff coming up for you?
Yeah, and I've used that as an opportunity to observe myself, because a lot has changed when I've been in the void. How I was a year ago is not the same as how I am now. And when we just did the Lightbringer case studies, I realized I loved them so much because every person that came in, there was something that I'd been through in my life that I could help and share with, on top of the healing modality that we were using. And that made me feel more confident about doing even more coaching and building programs. Because there's other things I've done in the past that I haven't felt that it's done enough for a client. So I've stopped even offering it.
Well, I mean, you weren't a stranger to the coaching world when you joined
I was
which is
a
our coaching
mindfulness coach.
certification and healing certification. But the thing is, you are such a different human now, in the fact your boundaries are so much different. What you're open and available for and what you're not open and available for, it's a whole different kettle of fish. Because I had this conversation, actually, believe it or not, with Jennifer Moore about, we were talking about empaths, and empaths are very much the overgiving.
Yeah.
It's one of our loveliest traits, but it's also one of our worst traits, in the fact that our energy gets depleted with the overgiving. And, you know, and you're not the same person that would overgive in the way that maybe of a couple of years ago, when you already knew how to coach and do these things, but there was very much maybe overgiving in that. And now you're able to hold the energy.
I became a bit fearful as well, because I'd made myself so ill, basically. I was a bit fearful of giving too much. But when you're giving from a completely different energy, it doesn't feel like that anymore. It actually feels quite enjoyable. So
energizing.
Everything is so different. And I'm
amazing.
to enjoy the rest of it. The rest of LightWeb Priestess.
Oh, so exciting. Tell us, Katie, when the Evolving on Purpose book, at the time of this going out, so it may change, but at the time of this going out, when is that Evolving on Purpose book? When can they get their mitts on that?
It's launching on the 3rd of July.
Amazing. I'm excited for it. I'm here for that.
We start in Australia and New Zealand. For me in the UK, it'll be the night before. So for me, I'll be starting on the 2nd. But yeah, I'm excited because we've got a lot of authors from all over the world. So more countries than we've had in the past, more authors. That it's the most authors that have been in a book that I've published as well. So I'm excited, very excited.
Amazing. I am excited for you, and I'm excited for this to come out. If people have been inspired by our conversation today, Katie, can you let them know where they can find you on the interwebs? And we'll make sure we'll link all the links and the link to the Soulful Valley podcast and all the things below. But let them know where they can find you if they're like scrambling to go and check you out. Where can they find you, Katie?
I have made it quite easy. It's soulfulvalley.com, and all of the links to my social medias, all of them are all along the bottom.
Amazing.
There's a page to my podcast if you're not on Apple. So yeah, it's all there, and all the links to apply for any of the book collaborations. There's also a book collaboration. Spirit told me to do a second poetry book as a collaboration, and there are poets hovering around me who haven't had the confidence to put their poetry out there. So we've got 9 people who've jumped into that already. When I haven't even got the book cover yet, but that's another thing that I've been told to do. So yeah,
beautiful.
all exciting.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.